Good morning to our guest today. Good afternoon and good evening. Hello, people of Iran. I hope that you are stay strong one more day, and we are here to support you also today. So this is Antonietta Lia with you from the north of Spain, and today I'm honored to have a very powerful woman, I can say that. And so, you know that when I always happy to have our guest with us, but when there is a woman like our guest today, I'm incredibly happy and proud of the episode, because I'm absolutely sure that we are going to have a very powerful episode today. So, but before to introduce her, she's connected from United States right now. So, unfortunately, and as usual, since the start of that podcast, I am obliged to give you some updates. Remember that when I mention number, they are not simply numbers; they are persons behind. So. Very quickly, I think that since September, the increasing now the number of arbitrary executions in Iran increased over 232 people. Among them, there are also women. There are since March 21st, I recall you that we have an increase, daily increase of execution. But the good news is that people in the prisons all around the country remember that this movement is supported right now by 52 prisons, all around the country. So it's still continuing, and especially grateful to the efforts of few inmates. They rescue from the death corridor other inmates with a kind of with the possibility to have another date for the execution. So this is the good news. The other good news is that families, and I take the opportunity to renew my support also to families of inmates on the death rows, and in general to the prisoners in so worse conditions, especially women. We're going to talk about that in particular also today. So they manifested before the principal institution of Iran against the situation. So you see that the movement is going ahead, is going to be strong, and that's why the regime is strengthening the efforts to mute the dissent in some way. So think also that unfortunately the news we have are really bad in relation to the so-called accusation against the new inmate, because it is also increasing the number of people accused of supporting foreign states. So you see that there is no excuse, no possibility to live in peace in that moment. So after that introduction, I'm pleased to introduce you to all of you, Professor Mireille Rabis. Bienvenue, Mireille. Who is a chair of Middle East Studies, associate professor of women's and gender and sexuality studies. But she is also specialized in francophone studies, and that's also a pleasure to me because my personal love was francophonie. Because of my father, it's the fault of my father. And she is professor at Dickinson College and adjunct professor also at Penn State in the United States, where she's connected today. So good morning to you, Mireille. Thank you very much for accepting that invitation. I'm really happy to have you. So you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. And I apologize for the for the nasal voice. I'm recovering from a cold. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Like nobody wants to meet to discuss violations of human rights. It's a sad reason to meet, but reality is this is where we are at today, and we must continue speaking about what's happening in Iran. And also, I would say, not just in Iran, I'll connect it to the whole regions, the violations of human rights in the whole region, from Iran all the way to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon, and to Gaza as well, Palestine. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer the questions for today.
Thank you very much. Just mean also to be precise for our audience that you are specialized into Middle East, and that's it's really important to us because today, I think for the first time in our podcast, that we can try to have a sort of intersectional vision of the situation in the Middle East. So please feel free to introduce the situation according to your expertise.
When you asked me to introduce the situation, I'm assuming you want me to speak about Iran and its impact in the region. Okay, so yeah. A couple of years ago, maybe it feels ages ago, but I think it was last year, I wrote about the failure of the Iranization of the Middle East. And this is what I mean. What I mean is we cannot look at the Iranian Revolution and the rise of that regime since 1979 till today without also looking at what's happening in the region. So all the human rights violation that we're seeing in Iran, they're happening also elsewhere in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, and Palestine is a little bit different, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's all part of a plan. The plan was never to kind of just restrict it to Iran itself, but also to export and expand that terrorist regime into the region. So the ideology is the dedication to the supreme leader. And of course, the ideology is one that is extremely conservative, patriarchal, and anyone opposed to that ideology is automatically either a traitor to the cause or someone who is blasphemous or someone who is accused of high treason and so on and so forth. So from 1979, this idea of allegiance to the supreme leader has been exported to Iraq, to Syria, and to Lebanon, and it resonated deeply with the Shia groups over there, particularly in Iraq, where you had the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. And the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein, we know also there were massacres against the Shia community. So it resonated, this ideology that the Shia have a voice. It resonated with the Iraqi Shia. And in Syria, we know that the Assad family, they're Alawites, so it's a form of sect of the Shiism in Islam. And if you expand it to Lebanon, if I'm looking at the Lebanese Shia were void of any representation in the state of Lebanon that favored at the time, I'm thinking particularly in the 70s and 80s, that favored in the time the Christians, particularly the Maronites and the Sunnis. So, in other words, the Iranian Revolution resonated with the Shia groups in this part of the world that felt marginalized and oppressed, which allowed for Iran to play, the Iranian regime to play on these emotions and to export its terrorism into these other countries. Now, of course, there are those who idealize this regime and think, like it's God sent and it's obeying God's ruling. But reality is, we know that it is a dictatorship. We know it is a totalitarian regime, and the proof is all the executions that we're witnessing today and the imprisonment of any voice that is dissenting and opposed to the regime. So this kind of Iranization of the region has been in the making since the 80s till 2023 with the 2024 even till the war between Hezbollah and Israel, and then the failure of the Assad regime in Syria, which kind of like put a question mark whether the Iranization of the region is possible. But again, this is all to say that this is not new. This has been happening since the 80s, and the goal was to actually expand Iranian power in the region from the actual territory of Iran all the way to Lebanon.
So thank you very much. It's quite interesting, the expression you used, the Iranization. I think it's the first time I hear that. And I think in a word you clarify, or better saying that you gave from a point of view, a more global vision of the situation, and the role and impact sometimes undervaluate of Iran in the region. So, and I already, in my introduction, I mentioned that the fact that that the increasing of arbitrary detention, the increasing number of arbitrary detention and consequently arbitrary executions doesn't stop. But what is increasing in a parallel way is the accusation to supporting a foreign state without any kind of specification. So do you think that relatively new, because it is one additional accusation since end of May, June, better said. So it is strictly related to this kind of failed Iranization you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things. If I'm looking at the Iranian regime, the oldest accusation against dissenting voices was blasphemy, right? Like that was the first accusation. It's like it's blasphemous. It's against the moral values and religious values, and we see this particularly true in cases of women who do not abide by the rules of how to dress up, right? Like when Mahsa Amini was beaten up to death in a police in a precinct in Iran. The accusation was that she was held by a religious police, and because she was not wearing the veil properly, and that was blasphemous, right? So blasphemy is the oldest trick or the oldest accusation. Now, the newest one that we're seeing, but if it's new for Iran, it's not new to Lebanon, and I'll explain. The new one is allegiance to foreign countries or treason. And explicitly in this case, I mean, we know that Iran is alluding to Israel and United States. So the argument of, the person is working for different powers or foreign powers is a response to the latest war that we're witnessing in the region.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, please do.
They never speak about the foreign powers, the oldest foreign states, because they don't recognize only older powers outside them.
Absolutely. I'm just like saying like what's behind the line, what's behind the scenes. So it's definitely alluding to the latest war that we saw, from October 7, the attacks on Israeli civilians by Hamas, and then the subsequent genocide that is ongoing in Gaza despite the ceasefire. So we also saw the theatrical way where Iran and Israel exchanged fire. So now it's kind of the newest accusation in Iran's book is like, okay, if you don't agree with the regime, it must be because you are pro-Israeli or pro-American. And this is for me a conflation of themes, because the support of the Palestinian cause should be separated from foreign policy. Iran, Israel, United States should be separated from how the Iranian themselves feel about Iran. But of course, the Iranian regime conflates all of these. So if one is opposed to war, then one is automatically pro Israel and pro United States. And so the reason why I said this kind of like accusation of treason is different in Iran than in Lebanon, for instance, if I'm looking at the crescent and entirety of the crescent. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, which we know is a proxy, it's a terrorist organization that operates from Lebanon. It has political representation in the parliament as well, but we also know that it's a proxy for Iran. The accusation of treason has always been there since the 80s. Any voice in Lebanon that is opposing Hezbollah is automatically conflated to be pro-Israel. And the accusation is immediately there. So, for instance, people who are pacifists, who are speaking for Palestine and the genocide in Palestine, but they're like, why should Lebanon be in the war with Israel? They're automatically accused by Hezbollah of being traitors. And we've seen this kind of language also in Syria. We've seen this kind of language in Iraq, but it's kind of making more and more appearance in Iran. And I think it's because perhaps it's out of desperation or lack of creativity, but definitely it's a newer on the scene in Iran, that's for sure.
Thank you very much for that. And to mention, I'm just would like to go backward to the reference of blasphemy, because this is one of my favorite topic among many, and I wrote some pieces about the balance between freedom of religion and the freedom to express religion from one side, and the freedom of expression on the other. And this is quite interesting, especially in this period, because very recently Portugal approved the first draft to expressly prohibit the use of burqa and niqab in the public sphere. So I must confess that I didn't read yet the entire text, and my opinion is only based at the moment over the comments of many colleagues. But it seems that it is one of the first law directly against Islam, with the idea to protect in some way women from the abuse to be covered. Yeah. In my view and in my experience, it's a kind of EU made hypocrisy about that, because there is behind a kind of lack of knowledge of what the Quran say about religious identity, what the freedom of choice about how to express religious identity. So it is a kind of manipulation, political manipulation in some way. We talked about that yesterday in our meeting. Political manipulation, which is coming back after the pandemic, because during the pandemic it stopped among France and Belgium, and after the recognition by the Human Rights Committee of a violation of religion freedom by France, precisely because of that, against the address that a few years before the Court of Human Rights had in the famous case SAS against France, where the European Court of Human Rights decided to give priority to the principle of vivre ensemble enshrined into the French Constitution, instead to give priority to the religious identity of each person. So it is a very complex issue, the issue of blasphemy. But I guess that a part of kind of responsibility is also assigned to this side of the globe, including UK. I remember during my period in Geneva, negotiations about it was many years ago, just at the start of the Human Rights Council, about the necessity to prevent it was a sort of transformation at the international level of blasphemy in some way, because the main resolutions were submitted at that time by Pakistan, Malaysia, and so on. It was a kind of offense, preventing of offenses against religion. When religious is a kind of abstract concept, instead to protect individual professing a kind of any given religion. So this is a kind of laissez-faire that in some way occurred in the past years, and now in certain regime we see a degeneration of that concept. What do you think?
So it's very interesting, because there's no doubt that some European policies or national policies in Europe are driven by Islamophobia. There's no doubt about it. Like, when I look at how the law has been implemented in France about religious signs, for instance, and being secular. I believe you mentioned Belgium as well, and now Portugal. I was not aware that Portugal did that. There's no doubt that there is an anti-immigration policy that is hidden between these lines, and Islamophobia that is hidden between these lines. But if you ask me my humble opinion about the burqa itself, not the veil, not the scarf, the burqa itself, there's no doubt, like all religious, all religion are patriarchal, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. So we cannot deny that. And I say this as someone who practices a religion, right? So I'm cognizant that the hypocrisy in it. So because they're all tailored toward male domination, they're all tailored to women doing certain duties, including being prudish, including reproducing children, including so this is to say that Islam is not alone in being patriarchal. And the way, if I'm interpreting this from a secular position, I would say that the obligation of veiling, or the invitation to veil, is definitely patriarchal. And it's this idea that a woman should conceal her beauty so she's not tempting men. I would say, you look away, I'm not hiding anything, right? But at the same time, I believe women should have the right to choose what they want. So if I'm looking at, I hope I don't come across as controversial here. Like, if I'm looking at religion is patriarchal. On the other hand, I believe women should have the right to choose. And unfortunately, the way these choices are happening, if I'm looking at the Middle East, I would say oftentimes the decisions of veiling are, there is weaponization of the veil as a tool of oppression. And I'm saying this because I'm looking at Afghanistan, I'm looking at the Arab Peninsula, I'm looking at places in Turkey, I'm looking at Iran. Clearly, women in these places are not choosing to veil. It's more an imposition by patriarchal society, by conservatism, and so on. So ultimately, my opinion is that women should choose what she wants to do with her body, whether veil or not veil. I'm personally opposed to the niqab, because even in religious reason, there's not a strong, it's a hadith actually, so it's not a strong requirement that a woman covers to that much. We know that the women of the Prophet were covered that much because they were special, so they covered, like the face, the hands. But there is a dispute out there that a Muslim woman does not necessarily need to abide by these. I'm saying this purely from my humble reading. I'm not a religious scholar, but I did live in the Muslim Arab world most of my life, right? So ultimately, I believe it's a woman's decision. I think the niqab is too far. I do believe that the veil is being weaponized by the West as much as by the East. The East is using it as a tool of oppressing women. The proof is we saw when we had the movement after Mahsa Amini was killed, the uprising in Iran with women, life freedom, women cutting their hair, burning their veils. This is because it's not a choice, right? On the other hand, we feel that men in Europe feel the need of regulating what women should wear and should not wear, but it's also a manifestation of their fear of Islam. So ultimately, all of this, it's definitely weaponized and interpreted in the servicing of whoever is in power, and typically it's men.
Thank you very much for this. And this allowed me to
Sorry.
No, don't worry, but
I'm sorry,
someone who is going watching us think that we transmit any kind of virus online because you have one, but might have any kind also of residual.
Good season to be sick.
So this is a really interesting, the fact that there is, let me go through the so-called French leisurettes and make a comparison. There is an advertisement here in Spain. I don't mention which one, but they used a very impactful phrase, because the phrase of the advertisement of the product is the true power is the power to choice.
Oh, yeah.
So and that when I watched that advertisement, I got the phrase to me that's true. That's the true power, but it is also a highest price power, especially for women to make choice. So, but what is interesting is that in the case of Iran, especially, I don't have precise data, but based on the data I have also from international NGOs, is the majority of women under arbitrary detention and in the very worst condition inside prison are all well-prepared women. Many of them are engineers. Like one of the latest ones submitted to a kind of torture because she's deprived of medical treatment and during the arrest, and in prison she's deprived of treatment of her chronic disease. And in 2008, the former special rapporteur of United Nations against torture underlined that the lack of access and the denial of access to pain treatment must be considered as a form of torture. So, but you see that it seems that the concentration is, in the case of Afghanistan, for example, you mentioned, which is actually the unique country in the world strictly forbidden to women and girls to have access to education.
Right.
It's a kind of special fear against the women, because once empowered, they are in the best position to change
Absolutely.
situation.
Absolutely. And it's kind of heartbreaking because one, it's a misinterpretation of the Quran and Islamic values. Nowhere it says a woman should not be educated. Right? As a matter of fact, one of the verses is like, read, right? Iqra, read, like so. And it's not exclusive to man. This is where Islamic scholars would tell you that we need a feminist reading of the Quran, which we don't have. But also, historically, I want to say two things. We in the 19th century in the Arab world, and I know Iran is not, and Afghanistan is not Arab world, but it was part of the reform, literary reform we had in the 19th century. We had what's called the Nahda, or the Renaissance in the Arab world. And we have a famous writer, Qasim Amini, who talked about that it's important to educate women and children because they are the schools for the future. So what I know this is so 19th century, right? But at the same time, if you think of what's happening today, the arrest of women who are educated in Iran, the gender segregation, the severe gender segregation that we're seeing in Afghanistan, particularly that girls are no longer allowed to school beyond elementary school. It is done on purpose because you're depriving future generation from. So the point that I'm trying to make here, it's in the now and the consequences are in the future. So in the now, it's of course, it's like, let's silence these voices of women that are strong, powerful, educated, opposing these patriarchal conservative values. But in the future, it also helps perpetuate these stereotypes, these submissive women, because you will no longer have women who are strong and, educated. I don't want to dismiss, though, the voices of women who did not have the privilege of education either, because it's important to recognize that the desire to be free is something that we're all born with. So I don't want to sound here like here I am in the United States pontificating about the value of education. And I don't want to sound like I'm dissing on women who did not have the privilege of being educated. That's not at all what I'm saying. Because a lot of, I'm thinking particularly of Algeria, for instance, during the colonial period, a lot of women from rural areas who were illiterate participating in the uprising against France. So definitely there's a role for that. But in the specific case of the future of the nation, where education plays a role, that's why this regime, whether it's the Taliban or the Iranian regime, are attacking educated women, because it's two stones in one. It's shaming families right now, and we know, honor plays a big role in our cultures. It's also a form of intimidation against people in the now, but also in the future. How else would you create a nation that is submissive to you if it's not by by educating them the way you want? Women, no education, stay home, and boys, you will get the education, the ideology education they want. So of course, I'm not surprised that they're oppressing women, and I'm not surprised that the execution is targeting women who are educated, and that the prisons are full of women who are educated in Iran. I'm not surprised at all, and my heart goes out to them, and I'm fully in heart and voice with them as well.
Thank you very much. I just let me to recall that they are on the top, on the front line of the protest, including of the protest Tuesdays against execution, precisely because they never give up. They never give up. Both women in prisons and women member of the family in prison. So this is,
I recently read something that stayed with me, and I'm fully cognizant that it's very binary. I want to give a shout out to my to the LGBT community also in Iran that is being persecuted. But what I read, it was something I saw on social media, that half the world is women and the other half is children of women. And so I'm not surprised that these women are on the front line, because they either have a sibling, a child, a father, like it's so much at stake that these women are not going back home just to cook a meal and be done. I'm not surprised that they're speaking up, and I'm not surprised that they're specially targeted, because they are, like you said, they're not giving up, and they will not. And it's funny, in 2019, we had a revolution in Lebanon, right before COVID. It broke my heart because it didn't go anywhere, precisely because COVID started, and the Lebanese state at the time used it to crush the opposition. But part of the opposition was against actually Hezbollah and co. And if you look it up, the symbol of the revolution was actually women. And literally, they started saying revolution is women. That's the symbol of it. So I'm not surprised that whether it's the Taliban or North Korea or, or even if you think about it, even in the United States, the attacks that we're witnessing against women, whether from reproductive justice to reproductive rights to freedom of expression, we know that most academics are women in the United States. So I'm not surprised that the attacks are against women, nor that on the front line we have women. And we shall continue. We shall continue.
Yes, of course, we should continue, but in my personal case, I'm alone in that case, in my battle from, I repeat, I'm based in Spain, but originally I'm from Italy. So just you mentioned academia, I think the worst women I met in Italy are from academia. Let the only men in the jury treat me like the last in the world, and they remain in silence because they need to justify their place in the academia to someone else.
Absolutely.
They are not autonomous at all. And I think that no one of them raised up the voice for women's rights or for Palestine, or even for Iran, for women in Iran, just when it was the movement in 2022, few days, because it's a kind of convenience. I'm not afraid to speak up truly, frankly, and directly, because we need to speak frankly and directly, exactly like people of Iran do. We cannot change anything. If I have learned something from the courageous people of Iran in these last couple of months, is that if you want to change something, you must maintain, you must stand up and be courageous, because even if courage has a price, that price is never, it will be never too high.
Yeah.
Because the consequence will be freedom, but you must continue to speak up frankly, directly, and no fear about that.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. For academia, if I may, you may find professors who are liberal, but the institution itself remains a conservative institution. It's ran like a business model, whatever it is, whether in the United States or Europe or Lebanon, it is still a business model. So the decisions are made in a sense of capitalist idea, right? So you might find professors here and there that are liberal and thinking in an intersectional level, like, which means that liberation of women in Iran is part of my liberation in Lebanon, is related to your liberation in Italy or in Spain. But reality is, one, the model remains predominantly male. If you think at a higher education institution, it's predominantly men who govern these institutions. It's ran like a business, and not all professors really think of intersectionality. One of the things that I'm encountering here as a Lebanese expatriate in the United States is like, we talk the talk, but it's all, it's all words. I cannot tell you how many diversity, equity, inclusion meetings I attended where, we're all into a coalition and liberation and all these big words, but then when it comes to transnational aspect of things, it's like nothing. So we talk about what's happening in the United States, Trump, the attack on higher education, different rights of different marginalized groups in the United States, but not one word about American foreign policy and how it's impacting the Middle East, knowing that American foreign policy, it's impacting us both in the United States and outside the United States. And so for me, it creates a sense of bitterness. Like, you want your DEI, coalition, liberation, collectively, whatever, you can do it without me. I'm gonna be in my own bubble in my separate way. And then of course you have academics that just like their work does not touch upon these things, and I can respect that. But I hear you, because it creates a sense of bitterness of like a fake advocacy for human rights and equity, where suddenly what you see as valuable is not either represented or is not seen as important. And so the question is, do you stay with the group and raise the voice and they look at you as a troublemaker, or you step out of it and be like, okay, goodbye, I'm gonna go elsewhere. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. This kind of like being like being a little bit bitter about our position in higher education. It's definitely a challenge. And I want to make sure, like, when I speak for Iran, maybe I don't want to necessarily put my institution on under pressure here, but I'm the only one who spoke about Iran and Afghanistan. And my department, Women, Gender, and Sexuality, we're busy with doing other things. To be fair, there are other things to be paying attention to, but reality is the transnational aspect of it is almost always in the United States forgotten. So, and it's very disappointing, very disappointing.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you for your disappointment. It's one more piece in this transnational battle for gender rights and for human rights in general. So, actually, I mentioned the example of academia, especially in Italy, but not only. In the past episode, we saw the decrease of interest, or from my point of view, a sort of a kind of selective interest, like you mentioned, if I rightly understood you, which battle I must choose in to maintain my environment, and this is actually what is happening especially in relation to Iran and the situation inside Iran. When someone look at the fact that more than 1,000 people have been
executed,
crushed like mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Because we must remember the majority of execution occur silently. Sometimes they are publicly like a sort of example and to diffuse fear and terror through the rest of the population. But the majority of them, they are silently. So in many cases, like very recently, families don't know that their beloved are going to death because night by night it occurs. For example, it is crazy. Neither in the best horror movie it may happen, I guess.
It is horrific. It is horrific. And again, it's so this is you excuse me, you're touching upon something that is also interesting, which is like what can we do from the outside, and how often do we get what can we do from the outside? What causes should we choose to advocate for? But also the advocacy, the fatigue of human rights advocacy, right? So it raises the question, like somebody can be watching this podcast at some point and thinking to themselves, well, I'm worried about China and Taiwan, so it's like the world where it is today, there's so much to worry about that it's like, where do we start? And I always tell my students that you don't have to be everywhere at the same time, because it's impossible. Just put yourself in what matters to you. So for instance, if environmental rights is your thing, do it, but do it well. If reproductive justice is your thing, do it, but do it well. Because by the end of the day, truly, we cannot be supporting and following every cause and putting our weight in every cause. It just happened that you and I were, I'm Middle Eastern, and it happens that we're both passionate about the Middle East, and we're paying real close attention to what's happening all the way from Iran to Palestine. We're paying attention to this. But it's also, on the other hand, there's this as humans. But on the other hand, you look at the politicization that is happening where, for instance, media, there's complete silence. Like if you look at CNN, BBC, there's complete silence about what's happening in Iran or in that part of the world in terms of human rights violation. And this becomes a political decision. So what I'm trying to say is like you and I were just human. We have a capacity. We have 24 hours a day. We have 7 days a week, right? Like, so we cannot be everywhere at the same time. But then when you think of the political choices that are being made by media outlets or universities or even publications, of what to shed the light on. Makes you puzzled of why there's such a silence about this. I'll give you an example. Nobody's talking about the famine in Sudan, for instance. It's not even in the news. It's not even news to begin with. The ceasefire and with Israel and Hamas, we're all talking about how Hamas violated the ceasefire and the hostages returned, but nobody talked about how the 2,000 Palestinians who've been years detained illegally by Israel have been returned, as if they're, like you used the term mosquito earlier, as if they're mosquitoes. And so it's this is what kind of makes me frustrated, is like the bias in how news report on these things. And of course they're not reporting on Iran for two reasons. One, Iran is presumed to be a terrorist regime, therefore Iran will do what Iran will do. So who cares whether they kill 1,000 people or 20 people? It's like another day in Iran. So it's like almost like this Orientalist, racist view of the Middle East of just like another day of violence. And two, political interest. They don't want to shed the light on what's happening in Iran because they don't want to rock the boat. So it's a kind of like a hit you in the gut, right? Like this kind of like, here you are trying to defend what you can and stand up for what you can or what you believe in. And at the same time, people who have the privileges of the voice, like a news anchor, media outlet, and so on, nothing. And so it is again, to go back full circle, it goes back to being bitter.
Yeah.
It goes back to being
I was thinking, thank you very much. I appreciate, and I don't know how to say it in English because I think in French, enchanté de goûter, So, and sometimes I think it's better don't interrupt you, but I can't prevent myself. I'm sorry.
That's the Mediterranean in us. We speak with our hands
Yeah,
and we interrupt.
the gesture, also for the ancient tradition, and also in Iran, actually, ancient tradition of market square,
Oh,
where
yeah.
negotiate everything, the price.
Yes.
So, I actually think I appreciate you mentioned what you say to your students. I used to say to students and also people, and let me give um, um, a sort of daily or weekly, better said, weekly advertised to the progressive, indirectly or directly. What I used to say also to people, because I love to stay among people in the street,
Yeah.
talk to people. Sometimes I go to a market just to speak with workers inside, how is, and so on. Something that the progressives everywhere, especially in certain countries of Europe, and I mentioned especially Italy, forgot. So, but if you are a woman doing that, in Italy, there is a big misunderstanding because a woman doing that means that she's searching for something.
Yeah.
This is a tragedy in a country in the middle of Mediterranean like Italy, with that kind of mentality, diffuse mentality. So just to see that it is not just a matter of Iran or Lebanon, also the so-called European Union member states
Yeah.
are involved, engaged in such kind of subtle battle against different women
Mm-hmm.
from socialized, the social accepted ones. So what the point is that to my students and to people, I used to always to say, there's no need to go in a square raising the voice to stand up for human rights. Start to take the bag to your neighbor to help him when you are back at home.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I can make a lot of examples. I have the chance to live in a small city in the north of Spain, so practically everyone knows everyone.
Yes, the village.
Very nice. It's very nice. So, well, before the pandemic, I couldn't live so much because I was traveling more than now. But since the 2022, I live more in the city. And so my neighbor discovered that I'm in the building because there was a fire in the building. So I opened the door, opened the door, called the alarm to everyone, door by door, you know. And it was 4 years ago. And since then, I always ask to people if they need something, because, take care of the world, start taking care from your
own backyard.
your floor. Yeah, your floor,
Yeah,
your
exactly.
backyard, where you live. So starting from that and then growing. If our attitude, I mean, in general terms, if our attitude is nasty, let me use that term, nasty against towards people around us, how we can be credible, sustaining entire people, entire nation, like in the case of Palestine, or like in the case of people of Iran. And in the case of Palestine, I think I appreciate the mention because you mentioned CNN, but if you look at BBC, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So because there is a kind of preserving position inside the state, but at the same time, this allowed me to send a message of solidarity to someone who is is trying to make the difference, not only as an investigative journalist in Italy, especially in Italy, who is Mr. Sigfrido Ranucci, who is the journalist in charge of the investigative journalism program, TV program, report called The Report. And very recently, I think 3 days ago, there is no clarity yet about who the true reason, because he's carrying on a lot of investigation in many sectors, but he has been victim of a bomb attack under his house in Rome. I think in Rome. I don't remember. I'm not sure if it has been in Rome or not, but just that night. So my solidarity to him and to someone like all people like him, all journalists like him, journalists in Palestine. I recall that in Palestine, according to official data, we lost more journalists than in 2 world conflicts. So people
absolutely.
doing their work. Yeah. So
absolutely.
The same in the case of Iran. So it's not a matter of interest. It doesn't matter if people cannot be there physically to document.
Yeah.
It's important to give to people of Iran voice, to maintain the attention centered. So to all journalists, especially doing that kind of investigative work, I make an appeal to
Yeah.
take action in relation to Iran too.
Absolutely, absolutely. They go hand in hand anyway, and this idea of who gets to get the platform and who are the journalists doing the ethical work of actually speaking up for the subaltern, right? Like they go hand in hand. But also, what you're touching upon is interesting because, to a certain extent, of course, I cannot compare the state policy of Iran to Israel because there is a longer history there. It's different context, different histories, and so on. But if I'm talking just about recent events, we can think of the impunity of both in terms of state practice and policy. Like the impunity, Netanyahu, even though there's an arrest warrant against him from the ICC.
No, now it's the savior of the world,
Right, exactly. And so it's like, but this is also to show how the world also reacts differently to human rights violation. It's that, of course, October 7 was a terrorist attack. There's no doubt civilians should never be a target. But at the same time, when you think of the policy that Israel has been perpetrating in Palestinian territories, from occupation to apartheid, and then if you compare it to Iran, think about who is getting the bigger attention in terms of criticism. If you look at past news media outlets and reports, Palestine might have been mentioned only by the special rapporteur on the Palestinian territories every now and then, but there was no big attention to what's happening to the Palestinian territory in the West Bank and in Gaza and East Jerusalem. There's no attention whatsoever till actually October 7. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is like there's such a focus on the Iranian regime, but the focus is on the regime alone, as if it's a victimless regime. Like we don't talk about numbers, we don't talk about what's happening on the ground.
No,
Except
it's like a sort of additional enemy in the present Middle East conflict.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's one
As
entity.
external, what he's
Absolutely.
doing inside is not considered at all.
Absolutely, and it's considered a homogenous thing. Like the Iranian regime equal the Iranian people as well. Like it's one entity, which is not true, and we know that's not to be true. So the point I'm trying to make here, like when you look at how world leaders and or foreign policy, not just American foreign policy, general foreign policy, they look at Iran as one entity, homogenous, right? A regime that is scary, which of course we should. But it sounds like it's a victimless regime because at the same time we don't know what's happening internally to Iran. Meanwhile, we don't talk at all about what's happening in Israel, Palestine, and the impunity is the same. The impunity is the same. There's a human rights violation here, and there's a human rights violation there, and the impunity is the same. And it's very frustrating because. When you think about international law and the crisis we're in right now in terms of international law, it kind of makes you raise an eyebrow. And also, to a certain extent, you lose legitimacy as a professor. You're standing in front of your student explaining about international law, and then they very easily can tell you, well, we have an arrest warrant against Putin and we have an arrest warrant against Netanyahu. One is strictly applicable. The other one is, possibly applicable. So it's kind of like makes you raise, puts you in a position where you can't defend the position of international law in these cases. So
I thank you for that, and this give me a chance. It's hard, of course. It's hard also to me to sustain and defend international law, but think about the total absence of international law.
Oh, totally.
If there was no voice,
anarchy,
international institution, no UN institution speaking up or put the accent about the situation,
absolutely.
I cannot imagine what would have been watching now.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I used to say, I must confess that after 4 years of pandemic and working hardly to spread the message to stay socially united but physically separated. It's becoming increasingly hard to me to try to spread the message, but I'm still doing, at least, which is that the crisis, it's the opportunity to strengthen our trust toward rules.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a breach, it's because we have the rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. So we are the defender. We must defend the rules more than ever. When a student asked to me about, for example, there was a meeting, a PhD meeting with my Indian students, which I take the opportunity to say hello to all of them at Shimla University in the north of India. One asked me about the situation in Gaza and how it is possible to still believe in the enforcement of international law due to the situation. Of course, they don't know. Europe doesn't know. Ignore the situation in Iran. Imagine in India.
Yeah.
It is not an offense. It's the reality. And I told them exactly that we are here to maintain the rule and to ask for accountability, to use the institutions to reach accountability. Because, and this also led me to make a call to all states, all head of states and government, which are who are responsible under international law, to do not accept this kind of gradual change, because the more is accepted the use of force to convince the other, the more is accepted the invasion of a sovereign state
Right.
as a tool to demonstrate power, the more the rule will be changed.
Right.
And we
Absolutely.
cannot accept that. So this is a call to the top, to the decision makers, but from our side as academic, but most important as an activist, because I forgot to underline, if you don't know that yet, that Mireia is an academic, is an expert, is a chair, but most important, is an activist like me. That's also, I'm so proud to have her too with us today. So the role as academic, as an activist, as a responsible of future, of educating future generation, not just to forming, educate next generation,
Absolutely. Yeah.
to just trust into the rules. Look if there is something that must be reinforced instead to delete that.
Yeah.
And the occasion of the 80th anniversary of United Nations in few days,
Yeah.
and debate about the new UN, which seems in some way most related to an adjustment conditioned by the lack of financial resources,
Yeah.
instead that are truly voluntary to change it. Next Friday, I will be connected with Tunisia, with my dear colleague in Tunisia, about the presentation of our book over the reform of the United Nations. So, and I think we will have a very great conversation about that. The second one after the in presence one 1 year ago. So never let the hope to abandon us.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
we can learn that from Iranian people, from Palestinian children, I don't want to mention Palestinian people in general. I just want to mention Palestinian children never losing the hope to have a brick of milk So I have that image of this young lady receiving 2 bricks of milk,
Yeah.
like kind of big lottery,
Yeah.
So this is my hope.
Yeah.
This is our hope, and this is for people of Iran, people who never give up. So, Mireia, I give you the floor because I don't want. I would love to stay here days. But first, I think you are going to lose your chair because you spend all the time with us. So you let your courses and your class behind you because of us. And secondly, I don't want to abuse because it is a long time we are together. Of course, I will be happy to have you again in
Thank
the
you.
next
I'll be happy to
episode.
join you again. Yeah.
Because I think that we are going to stop our podcast uh, when we finally have the execution, and I hope soon.
I hope
Uh,
so too.
at
I
the
hope so
moment,
too.
we must be
Yeah.
realistic and say
Yeah.
that we still have more episodes to go ahead.
Yeah.
So before to conclude, we used to ask to our guests to give a direct message to people of Iran and to people in prison, especially as a matter of to strengthen their courage and in solidarity with them.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. And as a message, maybe not just for the people in Iran, but also we mentioned earlier students who are discouraged by what's happening in the world. I think actually the people, what's happening in Iran, the people of Iran, but also those who were abused by the Syrian regime as well, because they were also part of the Iranian regime, right? In Iraq and Lebanon, all of those who were unfairly put in jail, detained, tortured, and unfortunately those we lost. We always must look up to those who, these people, to find inspiration in them. I cannot have the luxury of saying I'm done while I'm here in my office. So I look up to you to be inspired, to draw on your courage, to continue speaking for you, but also please know that you're not forgotten, and we will keep doing our work here to make sure that we establish true liberation all the way from Iran to Lebanon to Palestine. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mireille. Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
before to leave, let me also add a few words, few concluding words. Today, I don't think we have one touchable day more than another, but today to me is especially touchable because a touching day, because the topic we touch today are really sensitive to me, also personally, not professionally. But I would like to take these few last minutes just to ask to uh, to people in general, but also to decision maker. I know that my voice is just a simple voice of an activist, of an humble lady from the south of Italy, which has been recently renewed as the second region in Europe, just after Guinea Française. To be Calabria is the second region with the highest ranking of poverty in Europe. So it's the last developed region in Europe for access to education, access to healthcare, and so on. So also as a lady coming from there, and sometimes considered an exile, and from some friends, not for me. Please don't care about nationality, don't care about politics. Ask to yourself, and if this leader girl of I don't think she was more than 3 years old, were your girl, your daughter, your neighbor. You don't need to see the other like the other. We are the member of humanity. So in the case of people of Iran, it's exactly the same. Is in some way in front of us. Mediterranean region, it's just a one region. It includes Iran too, and people of. This is a special call to decision maker, but this is also a call to very normal people like us.
Yes.
Normal people like us to join the force, because sometimes I feel burned off, like you mentioned. Human rights is but
Fatigue.
secret, training your shoulder and your shoulder at night, and you will resist the responsibility to raise the voice for people in sufferance. So sorry if I try to use a sort of lower tone, but it is always important to use a smile and use irony to put in face to the negative power that we are still here to resist and to raise up. So thank you very much to stay with us today in this very passionate and interesting and so great session with Mireille. Merci Mireille d'être avec nous cet après-midi, ce matin.
Ce matin chez moi.
J'espère que vous serez avec nous encore une fois dans les prochains épisodes.
Merci.
See you next Tuesday.